Karen,
Yes.
are you feeling stuck?
A little bit, yeah.
Are you
I
are
am.
you facing a crisis?
Really,
N-
maybe a stuckness crisis.
Well, do you need clarity?
I always need clarity.
Well, then are you ready
Mm.
to feel inspired and energized?
I
And
am.
most importantly, are you looking to evolve your consciousness?
Yes, I am.
Then you're in luck because today's guest is ready to help with all of that and more with
Woohoo!
a little help from her extraterrestrial friends that she calls TARP. We are going on an interdimensional journey on this week's episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians.
My name is Will,
And I'm Karen.
and unlike Mulder and
We
Scully,
both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Welcome to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we got a very, very special treat. Dr. Gayle Thomas is an internationally renowned channeler and expert in higher consciousness and metaphysical healing. She guides individuals on transformative journeys of self-discovery and awakening and serves as a conduit for TARP, an extraterrestrial collective consciousness. Through her extraordinary ability, she offers profound insights and healing to those ready to receive. The question now is, are you ready to receive? Apparently, it's taken quite some time for Karen and I to be ready because we've been trying to get you on the show for a very long time, and the universe hasn't allowed it until today. So, Dr. Gayle Thomas, welcome finally to the show.
Hello. I'm so excited that we're having this chat finally today. And you're right, it has taken a while, hasn't it? Very happy to be here.
It has.
It has.
Very obviously, we were not ready, but we are ready now. We are fighting it. We forced ourselves to be ready because we had to have you on the show. So. All right. The very first question that jumps directly to mind, I'm sure everyone's going to have the question, TARP. Talk to us about this extra-dimensional collective consciousness.
TARP. Well, what can I say about them? They're non-physical, of course. They are the name for the collective conscious energy that I channel, that I'm very comfortable with channeling. I have a very easy connection with them. And they came to me following a cancer healing journey, I would say, in a time of darkness and desperation when I really internalized my healing process and I started to meditate a lot. And they are a non-physical collective consciousness that communicate to me very easily. They say they are of Andromedan origin, but they are now ascended past the need of a body. So they are collective conscious, not individualized people, so to speak. And they're here to help.
Wow, that's a mouthful. When they come through you, do you step back and they come through? Are you a conscious channel? Are you a trance channel? How does that work?
That's a good question. I don't get asked that very often. I'm a trance channel.
Ah.
So I close my eyes, I relax. As soon as I relax, they step in. I'm very much in the picture, but I'm taking a back seat. I'm aware of everything that's going on. I can hear the conversation that's happening. Sometimes I have opinions about it myself, but it's like sitting in the back seat of a car. And when they're done, I open my eyes and it's like I've had a sleep, but I do remember for a while. It's like remembering dreams. Then they fade. So I'm a conscious, you could say conscious trance channel. It's not like I fall asleep completely.
Conscious trance, that's the first one.
Yeah.
I want to know, what was your first experience with this? Like, did it freak you out? Did you think it was a dream? Tell me about that.
The first experience was actually different because they didn't come to me, first of all. I had a Christ consciousness experience. I had an experience in meditation where I felt Jesus come to me, and my hand lifted off my lap where I had been meditating and placed itself where my tumor had been on my breast. I had breast cancer, and I felt this intense bliss and love all around me. It was the most humbling thing that, of course, that ever happened to me. And I started to cry with total humility, total humbleness and gratitude. And the next day, that experience lasted a few seconds. The next day, it happened again. I asked Jesus to come back to me, and he did, but he didn't come inside me and all around me. I felt him come close, and I felt what I now know to be Tarp also come in, and I felt another presence. On the third day, Jesus wasn't there. Tarp were there on their own. And I felt as though my thoughts were being beamed through a tunnel. Everything became very clear. Everything, it was telepathic. It felt like I was echoing my thoughts through a long tunnel, and I could hear things coming back. And this other presence that felt as blissful as my experience with Jesus. And in the days and the couple of weeks that followed, I developed this connection with Tarp. They started to move my body in a sequence where my neck was being clicked and my shoulders and my back. They twist my back and pull my arms up back behind me and click my shoulders, which I understand was all about alignment. And then I could ask them questions and I'd hear yeses and nos. And then my head would nod for a yes and for a no. And then I asked if I could say the words yes and no. And then that followed. I could say yes and no with big nods of my head. They were kind of forcing the words out by shifting my head. With my connection with them over the couple of weeks after that, started to utter kind of baby sounds and vowel sounds. They were moving my head in a direction to help me utter a certain sound, like a T or a S, and it was exaggerated by the movement of my head that they were creating. And I just kind of witnessed it. And then they turned into actual words. And then I got it. I'm like, oh, okay, you just have to completely step out of the way. And then I started to speak in sentences quite fluently. So it happened quite quickly, within a few weeks.
Ah, and
Wow.
that didn't freak you out when they were taking over your body and making you do kinds of things? Because I think I would have thought like Exorcist type of material
Right.
going on.
Yeah, I can imagine that you would think that, but I it's easy to
Like
see
your
it
head
like,
didn't spin around completely,
oh
did
my
it?
God, no. That would freak me out. That's not healthy.
No,
And not good,
that's a whole different kind of
not good
alignment.
for posture. Um,
Mm.
I think because I'd spent a lot of time in my life meditating, I understood that I was coming through this connection was being formed from a coherent state. And the fact that this happened in a very blissful way, the first connection with Jesus, I think I knew enough to know that if it was something that wasn't, that was sinister or a little bit hostile to me, that I would feel it in my body. I wouldn't feel so well, or I'd feel a negative emotion. And I was very conscious.
Now, before we go any further, I need to call out the fact that you might, if you're watching the video, you can see that we are now talking to Gayle in a different room in a house. The gremlins have continued to plague us on this interview repeatedly. And if you had any idea of how many times we've stopped and started this interview, you would be surprised. But we are going to carry on and push through, and we're going to be successful. So whoever's trying to stop this interview from happening, cut it out. All right. Sorry, Gayle. So we were talking about The Exorcist and how your head did not go all the way around, which is a good thing. So
Um, yeah. So, by the way, we have cat support. I have my cat sitting with me now. So we have
oh,
feline energy. Yeah.
everything's gonna be all better now. Then that means that
Perfect.
we should have thought of that from the very beginning.
I know. Everybody needs a cat. Give tech support. Yeah. So, going back to what you were saying, I think, look, I taught meditation for many years, and I understand that when you come into something from a coherent place and it feels right, the frequency and the vibration of something feel right, then you can't be wrong. And I think that my first ever experience and contact with TARP came via an energy that was completely sublime and blissful. It felt like a very higher consciousness. And so too did my connection with TARP. So there was never any sinister feeling in my body. I understand that if there's a connection that isn't really in alignment with who you truly are, then you start to feel a little unwell or unbalanced or dizzy or headachy or nauseous, or you might feel some negative feelings or just feel not right. And none of that ever happened. So I didn't get freaked out. What I did want to think about was if I was perhaps embellishing it or making it up a bit too much, if I was
Mm,
projecting because I really wanted something to happen. And I'm quite a skeptical person because there are a lot of people out there that claim things that you think, I'm not sure if I believe you or not.
Yeah.
Um, I think my whole approach to spirituality has come from a sort of yoga background, and where there's been a lot of study in the old scriptures and um, the Vedas and the Upanishads, where there is a slightly, I would say, broader angle to consciousness. And I haven't really ever belonged to a religion. I would say I'm spiritual, so I can understand that there is a perspective on this kind of thing. And people, you hear people's opinions. People can worry because they think you're being possessed or taken over. And
Mhm.
I would say that we're all divine beings and we're masters of ourselves. And you can be your own worst enemy if you have a belief system that is something that creates fear in yourself. And I didn't feel that fear. I was just feeling the vibration of everything and and confirming that I was making a connection with a higher consciousness than what I am in my physical body as a human. So that was always a prerequisite before any communication in the beginning.
Mhm.
Now I don't need to ask that because we're like old buddies. But I mean,
And
it's an important question to ask, and it's something that comes up a lot when I'm training people because there can be some fear around it. I mean, people don't necessarily ask for channeling training if they're scared of making a connection. People are
Mhm.
usually quite open to it and wanting that to happen. But it's quite important to discern what the feeling is in that connection and to understand what is your thoughts in the process or what is your contribution or, um,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I was being possessed or in the exorcist. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had kind of a more of a pleasant introduction. I mean, people, Jesus is a known entity. So people kind of have maybe that comfort. And then, he's like, well, I'm kind of busy, but here, let me leave you in good hands.
I'm kind of busy.
You know? So it was like this nice little transition. So I think that would
Yeah.
make it much less scary.
Right. Hey, I want you to meet my friends. They're going to take over from here.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I think since then, I have had a couple of interactions uh, with Jesus or Christ consciousness. And what I've come to understand from it is that it's more a consciousness and a way of life and a way of being rather than the man
Hmm.
himself. And I feel obviously that this kind of consciousness was embodied as a man, the one that we all know of. But
Hmm.
beyond that, it is a consciousness that is beyond religion and is beyond even the idea of ET races. It's a very high consciousness, which is a bridge um, for contact. And I think if you analyze what contact is, I mean, why would I have made contact with Tarp or Tarp have made contact with me? Ultimately, we all spring from the same higher consciousness, even if we're not from the same planet. So I think there's an even bigger picture to my channeling Tarp or making contact with Tarp. And that bigger
Hmm.
picture is, part of what came to me first of all via the idea of this uh, connection with Jesus. So
Mm,
there's a kind of
Hmm.
bigger picture to all of this.
right,
Um,
right. Would you feel, is it fair to say that the Christ consciousness is, I mean, we are all part of that Christ consciousness, but we have separated ourselves to come to the world? I mean, are we part of that Christ consciousness or are we separate from it?
yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And I think we can get tied up quite easily on language because language is quite limiting and can kind of cap our understanding of things by saying Jesus or Christ consciousness. I think
Hmm.
we all spring from the oneness, the source, the universal cosmic consciousness, or God, or the many names that we have for God, or
Mm.
not
Hmm.
using the word God. We come from a kind of whole, unified, perfect place, and we are all fractalized versions experiencing different parts or aspects of itself. But with our ego identity, we feel separate. And there
Hmm.
are uh, vehicles that happen, or agents for our enlightenment that happen, that might be contact with an angelic being, or channeling an extraterrestrial, or a yoga class. There are agents for our ushering of our higher, bringing us into a place of higher consciousness. And I think Christ consciousness is a way of understanding that. And I think it's a way for humans to experience that divineness of, which is the kind of background of our existence. And I
Mm.
think you can be open to it or not. And I feel that that kind of thing, I don't know if you come across it with other guests on your show, but that kind of thing is happening more and more. I seem to come across a lot of people that I listen to on YouTube, or see YouTube people or podcasts, where they're having Christ consciousness experiences, just kind of sometimes out of the blue. And I think it's more a sudden way of knowing, or a way of understanding, or a way of seeing experience and life and why we are here. And I think once someone has it, they change. They kind of can't go back. It's
Hmm.
a very humbling experience. So I think
Mm.
it's part of the oneness of what we are. I don't think it's the final, most absolute place. I think it's an amenable, high conscious um, mediator
Mm.
between where we are and what is our absolute origin and source, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, or like you said, a bridge. And I think that's a perfect way to understand, at least from what I was taught. I grew up Catholic, is Jesus. I think it was maybe a better way to explain that connection to the ultimate source, to God. And so many people down here need a way to understand that in a human way,
Mm.
because wrapping your head around it is very difficult. So this person comes who is this source, this channel, this bridge. If you listen, if you learn, if you follow these lessons, these teachings, then you can, you know, make your way across the bridge and make it to that source.
Mm.
It's
Yes,
very
I think
interesting.
it's yeah, many pathways in, right? And what
Hmm.
to you and grabs you may not hook the other person in. Everyone has their way in. I mean, it could be martial arts, it could be yoga, it could be a breath work class, it
Mm.
could be um reading the Bible, it could be a beautiful piece of music. I mean, everyone has their own unique pathway in, if they're looking, if they're seeking, right? The way that
Hmm.
is unique and able to be absorbed and
Mm.
taken up upon by the person.
That's a
Yeah,
great point, and sometimes it could even come from listening to a podcast.
that's
Exactly.
true.
Even one that's had loads of problems with connection and
Right.
it's a cat.
Yeah,
Cat makes it work now.
It is the cat,
it
Yeah.
is the cat.
the antenna tail.
Mm. Uh, well, so I do want to dive a little bit more into the wisdom of the consciousness and the wisdom that they've imparted on you, that you have brought forth. But before we do that, I do want to talk about the physicality of the channeling itself. We've had other folks that have channeled different entities on the show before,
Mhm.
and some were just regular people. They weren't obviously trans channels. They were very conscious. They would just transfer information. But others would transform. Their voice would be different. Their accent would be different. Their mannerisms are different. Their physicality is very different. How is it for you? Is it like, do you change? Does your voice change, or is it just Gail that's just speaking?
It used to change quite dramatically, and I still move a lot. So part of what they do is they move me to encourage me to get the words out. And I think that while my voice is much more calmed down and more like my voice now, there are times when perhaps I'm feeling tired and I channel, or I did an interview recently with a man called Alan Steinfeld. I don't know if you know who he is. He interviews lots of channels, but they were very exaggerated because I felt a little bit nervous. So they were really kind of moving my head a lot to make me say the words, because I went into a little bit of a shy mode where I was saying, wait, should I say that? And they were like, say it. So they were kind of really exaggerating my movements and my gestures. But generally they've calmed down a lot. However, I have a lot of the head movements and hands.
But when you're channeling and you're feeling this bliss, eh, isn't it hard to come out? Like, I feel like I would just want to stay in that situation all the time.
Yeah, you're so right. Because at the end of a channeling session, I just have my eyes closed. I think, oh, I need to go back into the room. I don't really want, it feels really nice here. In the kind of way I would say that, if it's a cold winter morning and you're really enjoying your sleep, but you heard the alarm go off, and that kind of moment where you're not fully awake and you're so warm and cozy in bed, you're like, I have to
Mm,
open my eyes. That's kind of how it feels.
Okay.
yeah. No,
How-
that's a great visual. I know exactly
Mm.
what you mean. And some people have labeled other people as bliss bunnies, right? The problem is that you don't want to stay in that state for too long. But really, we're here to mix the two, right? We can't live in one or the other. We've got to be in both lives.
Yeah. I mean, for me, look, yeah, we chose to come into a body and be humans. If we didn't, we'd be the non-physical part of us that's already there. This is the kind of holiday for us to have a body and be awake. But, for me, when I'm channeling, time collapses. So an hour could be swallowed up and I come out of it and I'm like, oh, okay. Sometimes the sun goes down or, like, oh, I feel like I lost a bit of time there. So actually, I restrict the amount of time that I channel each day. I cap it at 2 to 3 hours, right, for clients. I don't do more than that because otherwise I lose my life. So while it's important
Mm.
work, I think that I'm doing, not just for myself, but of course it's soothing and positive for clients. I need to live my life. I
Yeah.
have teenage daughters. I have a husband. I have 3 cats. I have a life, and um, yeah, it's the time collapsing thing that makes you feel that you've kind of the whole part of the day is kind of collapsed into nothing. It's a weird
Right,
thing. No time and space in that dimension.
Yeah.
right, right. Well, but as a producer, everything inside me is screaming to say we need to see and talk to TARP. However, I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time because
Right.
we need to take a break. When we do come back, we're going to talk about some of the wisdom that TARP has inspired in you and that you've shared with the world. Right after these messages, stay with us. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We're talking to Dr. Gayle Thomas. She is a trans channel for an extraterrestrial entity. Actually, it's a collective consciousness. It's not like ET phoning home. This is a collective of extraterrestrial beings that are non-corporeal who come through her to impart a lot of wisdom to help us in our elevation of our consciousness and things like that. And we have dove into all the physical stuff that we possibly could at this point in time. Now we need to shift our attention to the actual wisdom. Now, I know that's a loaded question, Dr. Gayle, but I need to ask, is there a particular message that TARP seems to be wanting to get out more today than they were in the past?
That they were in the past. That is an interesting question. Um, Now there is a main mission that they had, and which they imparted to me, very early on, which is they are here to help raise the consciousness of people and help people experience outside of their five senses to understand how, uh, in a sense, decentralized their consciousness is. I don't, maybe that's a word that's misleading. How sovereign you are as a human being and how you have the power to understand who you really are. Right. And
Mm,
they were especially interested in going to the people that are more sensitive, more empathic, children, young people also, and also empathic people. I think I said that already. To help them, to activate and to help them realize who they are, so they in turn can go on and help other people. Now, I think it's that original mission is still there, but they really are encouraging more and more to develop your consciousness, to develop your, you can say ESP, you can say, again, consciousness outside of your physical senses. So you are not scared. So you're not living in fear with AI, for example, because
Mm.
they say there's only one intelligence, one consciousness, and you mustn't be afraid. AI is a non-physical thing, and consciousness is a non-physical thing. We outlive our physical body, for example. And they
Mhm.
want people to understand and move more into that realm, move more into the imaginal realm. So you understand who you are. So you are not this timid thing that's worried about everything that's going on the planet and the breaking down of systems. With the breaking down of all these things that we used to call our support systems, they're encouraging us now to find our own internal support, which is an infinite, vast,
Mm.
divine source of oneness, which is the most important thing I think that they're trying to get across at the moment, to cultivate
Okay.
consciousness.
That makes perfect sense, and it's wonderful to hear that that's the message that they're trying to get out. The reason why I asked the question the way I did is because it seems like we are at a crossroads as a human race, and we're getting messages that suddenly become more emphatic, more insistent. Here's the thing: you've got to learn this now before it's too late. So I didn't know if that was something that TARP was doing, or whether they're sticking to the original mission. And it sounds like the original mission is what they're doing. That's great because we
Mhm.
need that very much right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, it's not really now before it's too late, but there is an understanding of the people that are ready will come to find someone like me or something else that resonates with them as well, to learn this process themselves, to take the process further themselves. But it's kind of that wave effect. It's kind of that 100 monkey effect,
Mm,
talking about the 100 monkey phenomenon. The more people that learn these skills, the more we're kind of tipping the balance. And it really is
Mhm.
about the overall consciousness of our species on this planet and having a huge impact on what happens. Um, by the way, I actually wrote a paper on this about our consciousness being compartmentalized and how we tend to suppress and invalidate trans-dimensional communications or trans-dimensional engagements. If we could learn to integrate the two parts of ourselves, the non-physical and the physical, then we'd
Mhm.
rapidly evolve. We'd kind of go through some metamorphosis, and we'd understand that we can make contact not just with each other without prejudice, because we'd see the non-physicalness and the divineness within each other, which, oh my goodness, do we need that right now on this planet?
oh boy,
Oh, yes.
and then
Wouldn't
some.
But
Mm,
also the animals, the animal beings, and non-terrestrial beings, because we all still come from the same oneness of everything, even if they're dressed in a different kind of spacesuit. Um,
Mhm.
there's a real kind of validity in learning to go above the fears and the repressed traumas that are in our consciousness that are compartmentalized. If we can come to terms, this is something that Tarp obviously has told me. If we can come to terms with our traumas and the things that scare us and understand there's nothing to be scared of, shine a light on all of that, then we integrate our consciousness and we can uh, perceive better
Mhm.
what's not necessarily been apparent to us in the past. The veils are thinning, so to speak. So I think this is the journey we're on. It's already started to happen. I mean, and as it
Mhm.
starts to happen, we see more chaos in the world. We see, all kinds of stuff happening. It's very
mm,
reactive. There's a lot of duality you see happening in the world, a lot of divisory things happening, a lot of division, and a lot of
Mhm.
this kind of friction of positives and negatives. But out of that, there's a way out of that. And it's just to kind of float above it with your consciousness and see that there's a bigger picture.
mm.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And I mean, a lot to unpack.
Sorry.
And for those of you who don't know about the 100th monkey, we don't have time to talk about it right now, but it is a scientific study or thought process that talks about the evolution, and it's
Mhm.
really fascinating. So definitely, I would recommend you googling it. But what I really want to focus on is the latter part of what you talked about, and that is the division and the strife that we're feeling right now. I have a theory,
Hmm.
and I've talked about it with certain people, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
We've all heard that hell or high water, we're moving, we're going. Like, in fact, we've already gone. The world has already transcended into the fifth dimension. And what we're feeling is that uncomfortableness in our physical bodies because we're no longer in vibrational alignment with the world the way that it is. And some of those that are less connected are the ones that are causing the more strife because they are resisting that change, that vibrational frequency. And those of us who are transcending it, and I include me in that because I want to be in that group, but not because I really
Hmm.
am, but
Hmm.
we are actually more aligned with that frequency. Is that something that TARP has talked about in the past? Could there be some validity in that thought process?
Yes, it's all about resonance. So, and you get what you focus on, you get what you expect to see, you get what tallies with your belief systems, which is another kind of reason why
Mm,
you should get your subconscious out in the air to, get your dirty laundry out and have a look at it, because it will impact and inform you and what you see in the world. So it's an interesting question because all this stuff is happening in the world, and if we keep looking at it every day and identifying with the suffering, it's, we feel we need to do it to understand what's going on with our a fellow human being. But there is a way to look at it with compassion, yet a little bit of detachment. If you think Dalai Lama here, try to embody Dalai
Mhm.
Lama kind of vibes.
mm,
Because if you want peace and happiness, you have to focus on peace and happiness, not on, I want the war to stop or I want this to stop, because you're focused and you're in the vibration of that. So it's a tricky one to navigate. But, again, this is what talk about. If you can just gauge your life and the path that you lead and the steps you take on your path via how you feel, and let that inform you first. So be vibration oriented rather than action oriented. So I'm not going to watch the news and decide that I'm really upset, I'm really depressed, I'm really scared. And that's going to inform the way I'm going to interact with my family and the way I'm going to cook dinner and eat my dinner. I'm going to say to myself, for example, if I've seen the news, I'm not feeling so good right now. I'm going to take care of my vibration. I'm going to get myself into a more generalized place and then start again, and then let that inform my day, because it's very important what we dwell on and what we focus on and what we put our energy into. We have divine energy. We're all channels. We're all channeling divine energy into physical by the things we say, by the things we do. We are channeling. We're not just a store of that divine energy. It comes out through our physical sense organs and our arms and our legs and everything we do and everything we transact in the world. And there's a frequency to that. And we need to just be more mindful and acknowledge what we are and try and channel the energy that we want to see in the world, rather than focus on the things that we don't want to see in the world. And actually, we're more impactful, more helpful, more positive, in a better state of mind and having uh, a higher consciousness with it.
mm. It's wonderful to say and to feel, and exactly what I definitely want to experience. How does one go about doing that in this day and age, in this world where you're constantly
Yeah.
bombarded with Ukraine and Israel, Gaza, all the challenges are out there right now. The all the stuff happening politically here in the U.S.
And all the mass shootings we
All
have.
the
And
mass shootings, right?
Yes.
All this stuff,
mm,
you're drawn. You get messages on your phone, breaking news of this or that or the other
Yes.
thing, and you're drawn to it because you're interested
Hmm.
in the current affairs and things like that. But when it's all negative current affairs, how do you find the fortitude to say no, no more? I'm gonna disconnect from my phone. I'm gonna disconnect from the news. I'm gonna disconnect from my interest in these proceedings
Hmm.
and move forward in a way that is better for all mankind.
Yeah. Well, top say the more you see this kind of stuff, I'm not going to repeat all the things that you said for a reason, for the reasons that we just spoke about. The more you see that
Of
kind of
course.
stuff, the more you go with extreme kindness. And extreme kindness, it can be passive or active, but the more active and the more distracting that extreme kindness is a very practical mode of being. Rather than saying, I'm going to go and read a self help book or I'm going to go and have a massage. Oh, actually, that's a nice idea. A massage is a nice thing. It might sound a little bit indulgent when you're feeling down, but it's not always practical. The most practical thing is turn to yourself and be extremely kind, or to your pet, or to your spouse, or to your child, or to your friend, or the person at the bus stop, the person that you meet in the bank or the supermarket, the ones that you don't know. Smiles, like look through your eyes with this loving intention. This it's a passive thing as well as an active thing. And that's a way through it, because it's very practical, because you have to put effort into that. And that's
Hmm.
not only is it infectious to the other person, if you give the most beautiful smile you can give, it is an infectious energy. You are conditioning yourself to be like that, no matter what, no matter what. Extreme kindness, even to those people that you may not be not so fond of. Um, but I think on a very basic level, without having, a good thing to say to you here in this interview, because it's a short interview, and the easiest thing to remember, rather than a 10-step process or this or that, just remember kindness. Go into service mode, kindness mode. And service doesn't mean you have to give up your weekend and work at a homeless shelter. Kindness can be to the elderly lady across the road. It can be even just to yourself, rather than saying bad stuff to yourself all the time. You don't look great or this or that. It's can be applied to the macro or the micro. And I think that's the easiest one to remember, and the most mobilizing in terms of energy and impact.
I love that, because it's one thing just to say turn your devices and everything off and just be oblivious to it, but that that's not putting anything positive out there. So it's the world we live in. All this stuff happens. I mean, you have to be aware of it, but then taking that and like you said, turning it into kindness, I think is it's just the perfect answer to that. So
Yeah.
thank you.
It's so validating because my eyes are tearing up. Like I can't
Well,
stop. I'm keep rubbing,
Mm.
but I'm not feeling sad. But
mhm.
your words, your your energy that came through, it
Yes,
really affects me, right? So it
yes,
obviously that is something I need to focus on because it is eliciting a strong response. So thank you for that
Mhm.
because we've
yeah,
asked that question many times and never once have we gotten such a great response. We've gotten great responses,
Right.
but that one resonates with me. The ultra kindness, that's
yeah.
a perfect
Yeah.
answer.
It's a counterbalance. So
Mhm.
every once in a while, I lead a peace meditation. They're free to join, but the more we see this stuff that's so contrasting, so challenging, and so fear-inducing, the more the more intense you go with the love and the kindness. It's
Mm.
I'm not going to stop, right? The more I see the
Mhm.
darkness, the more we have to go in the way of the light. That's what we
The
are
more
as
we need
human
it.
beings. That's who we are. That's what we have. And we are all one. And in fact, we spoke about agents for our enlightenment, things happening to us. Some people see spacecraft or UFOs, or they have an enlightening meditative experience. You know, Agents for our enlightenment can also be the bad things, the things that we don't like. Because if you just take this stuff and how you metabolize it, because you are a human, you are a channel, you are a metabolizer of energy, you're a transducer. We are. We're incredible. We have an electrical heart. We take non-physical, we put it into the physical. We can We've harnessed electricity. We can make wind power. We can do so many things. We created the wheel. We are harnessers of energy. So we can transmute what we see. And that's what we're here to do. We're all one. We're all part of it. And, you have to see these phenomena that are contrasting in our life as agents for our enlightenment, because maybe we wouldn't change, right? There always has to be something to bounce off of, to know what to strive for, to move towards. So,
Yeah. And that emotional impact that this negative things can have can really cause you to have a positive emotional. If it didn't affect you at all, it wouldn't matter.
Mm.
yes, yeah. And, part of this experience in physical and being human is to have the duality, is to have like a
Mhm.
battery, the positive and the negative side. And in that, there's a kind of bouncing off of, which creates expansion. If we didn't
Mm.
want to experience that, we just remain in non-physical. There is a
Yeah.
there is actually, and it might sound controversial what I'm going to say, there is on a higher level a symphony happening. There is a perfection and there is a unity to everything that is, and it's playing out to expand and experience itself, actually all in the name of love. Um, Even the dark things, even those scary things, are designed to pull us forward and to enlighten us, to make us learn and understand. And we're here to move through the duality and transduce it.
I am so glad we pushed through and got through finally because you are throwing down some wisdom that is, I mean, it is powerful stuff. I'm feeling
Thank
wow, like
you.
I don't even have the words.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to say goodbye yet, so I'm just gonna keep going.
No, it is an incredible message, and we've had some great ones, but not the way you're putting it, not the lesson that you're teaching right now. This
Mm,
is so impactful. So thank
de-
you.
definitely.
Yeah, right.
Mm,
It's passionate.
Hmm.
I think maybe it's more passionate at the moment because I'm just a regular person that has had to, look at the news on my phone today and,
Yeah.
have a look at
mhm.
everything.
Well,
And
you're practicing what you preach.
yeah, well, I'm not
Yep.
going to stop. I'm not going to give up. There's one
Yeah.
way, right? I see it
Yeah.
as one way, right? And
Yeah.
it's not one way or the
Yeah.
highway, but it's one way to return to where we're all from anyway. And
Yeah.
some people get there
Right.
at rates and different speeds at the way they need to learn that's best for them.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that some of the negative things also propel us forward, and I would assume that I mean, I know that's exactly what happened with unfortunately your breast cancer prognosis. We have something in common. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you before or not, but a
Mhm.
few years ago I was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Well, really?
So,
Mm,
and the act of going through that and getting out on the other side has
mhm,
thrust me, with the help of our community, into a whole new enlightened thought process I didn't have prior to it. So, um,
indeed.
t- tell us about that prognosis. How did it affect you? I mean, it's hard not to go into knowing from firsthand experience. It's hard not
Yeah.
to go into a negative mind space. So, how did you deal with that?
Well, I did go into a negative mind space, even though I was someone that would say I had a lot of resources that I used to teach, being a meditation teacher before and a holistic coach, the kind of normal work that I did before I became a channel. But I did go into that dark space, primarily because I'm a parent and my fear was leaving my girls behind.
Hmm.
But it was such a dark feeling of fear that for me, I didn't resonate at the time with going down the allopathic medical route for my treatment. And I meditated on it a while and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go inside and I'm going to be the alchemist of my own biology. I'm going to do this. I'm going to not just change all the health behaviors that got me to this place. I had a very traumatic experience that I believe really contributed to me getting, they call it the hammer effect. People usually have a big trauma and then cancer comes a few years down the line. So that happened to
Mm,
me. Um, so I started, looking at my health behaviors and, I cleaned up a lot of stuff and I started to sleep well and do my breath and yoga and prayer and meditation, everything I could do. I was throwing at it. And I did lots of other alternative therapies. I did a water fast in a clinic in San Francisco. I did intravenous nutrition and all kinds of things. What was the question you asked me? I just went off on such a tangent. The fear. Yeah, the fear.
mhm.
I also had to look at what it was in my personality. Now, that's a hard one to confront. That made me the kind of type of person to get cancer. And I had to admit in there that there was a little bit of a victim mentality um, with all the trauma that I'd been through. And I was someone that was internalizing it. Um, so I looked at my mindset and my way of framing the situation, how I got there, my behaviors as a human being, very confronting things, sometimes uncomfortable to have to look at yourself and admit, I could do this a bit better. Maybe I should stop looking at myself like a victim there. Um, so there's a lot that I changed around. And I think after I had this, experience with Christ consciousness and that communication, you could call it the other side. I mean, it's not really the other side, but that's an old school term, that there is another
Hmm.
side beyond the physical life. It took away my fear. But I think what empowered me more was taking my own consciousness into my own hands. So taking my health behaviors rather than just turning up at a hospital and saying, what do I do? All my responsibility is not here. All my power is with you and what you tell me to do. I started to look at the cancer as a gift, a gift of transformation. And I just
Mm,
changed the language around it because I knew, wow, this is definitely going to transform me. And when I come out
mm,
the other side, it's like emerging as a butterfly. The other side, I'm going to be a different person because I know I'm about to go down the rabbit hole. I'm about to really spend a lot of time with myself and introspect and meditate and go inside rather than, just focusing on what can be changed outside. That in itself is empowering. I don't think you have to go on and have a, a Christ consciousness experience or begin channeling. I think you just have to look at what's available for you if you've got cancer and feel what feels right to you. And it could be that chemo feels right to you and it is right for some people. It could be that some other path or therapy is right for you, but just feeling into it and start to be vibration oriented puts the power and the sovereignty back on you. And
mm,
that is a game changer. I don't know how you
mm.
felt in your process, but um yeah.
Yeah, I think in fact as you're talking, I'm thinking I need to take your words just now to clip that segment out, and anytime someone asks me what it was like, just play your words because that's exactly. I mean, almost word for word what you went through is exactly what I experienced.
Really?
But I gotta ask, you're in remission now? Yeah, everything's
Yeah.
good.
Yes, yes. Yes, of course,
And
yeah.
did you do any allopathic medicine? Did you do chemo? Did you get surgery? How did you get beyond it?
I got surgery, so, I from finding the, tumor, I was very lucky. They offered for me to go into surgery the next day. I say lucky, I mean, that was my path, okay? So I had it
Hmm.
removed, and then in between this surgery recovery time and when I was supposed to start the second lot of treatment, it would have been radio and then chemo.
Hmm.
um, I started to go down the rabbit hole and started to think, what's right for me here? And that's when I started to do all the other stuff. Now, I since learned that actually a lot of people completely remove their tumors by doing water fasts because autophagy, the concept of autophagy, and if you step out of the way, let go and let God in a sense, in a different form,
Hmm.
you stop eating, you can channel all that divine energy into your own healing rather than all this energy going into your guts and your digestive system to constantly process the food that's going in it. And it's what animals do when they're injured. They hibernate and they make themselves better. I don't know if you've seen that thing on
Mm,
Netflix, My Octopus Teacher, where the octopus loses an arm and he grows it back and
Yes.
gives away. Right. So there's a natural process with divine energy. And I discovered that water fasting is a very healthful and helpful tool to a lot of the conditions out there. Not all of them, but that was also a helpful thing to know.
mm,
Um, and when I went to the clinic that I went to, I learned that there were a lot of people there that got rid of their tumors without even having surgery. In fact, it was recommended to me by a friend who had a prostate tumor and read a book called The Science and Fine Arts of Fasting and said to himself, right, I'm going to stop eating for 21 days and we'll see if my prostate tumor goes away. And after 21 days, it went.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, I did not do any surgery or chemo or anything like that. It actually found a way to leave on its own. I didn't water fast, but
Amazing.
there's other things that, yeah, it was incredible. I could talk to you for days. No, literally. I mean, I'm amazed at how you have this energy that draws you in, and you have a wisdom that the way that you speak and the way that you impart your information is wonderful. I can completely see either why TARP decided to go through you or the influences of TARP on you, because this has been fantastic. And I know before we leave, I do need to mention you are the author of a book called Awakening to Channel. So you actually do help those who want to learn how to channel to be able to do that. That's that right?
Yes, it's true. The book thing is a bit complicated, and there's a small story. So I train people to awaken to their higher selves and connect with their higher selves or their guides, wherever they want to take it. Now, the book, Awakening to Channel, that was in the editing process. And then Tarp stopped me and said, listen, this book you're writing, can you just put it to one side a second? And we want to channel a book through you right now. It'll be a short book, just 30,000 words. And then you can go back to that, but release this one first. So in the space of 2 weeks, I had my eyes closed and my fingers on the typewriter, and I streamed through this TARP book, which is not released yet. I'm now editing that, and I think the name will probably be the TARP book.
It's not fair, kind of teasing us like that, not being able to get it. So
that should be out before Christmas.
Okay.
But this book is really cool. I couldn't have written it. I couldn't have written it myself. They streamed it, and it was one long 30,000 word paragraph. Oh, they did make notes. So this should be called this chapter. This could be this. This should be called that chapter. But basically, I've now had to go along and put paragraphs and full stops and capital letters and grammar. Sometimes they're a little bit abstract. I've had to explain it a little bit. But there is that book, which I think is quite an important book to read, quite an easy book to read because it's much smaller. And I think that what will follow on from that book are lots of smaller books and lots of children's books, because you can literally take a chapter of that book and turn it into a book of itself. So they have a chapter in the book, for example, called The Architecture of Self, and it explains the structure of who we are. Many chapters.
So you are an author of multiple books. It just hasn't been released yet. So
Exactly.
you have sold already. You're pre-sold at least one copy, because
Yes.
I'm going to devour it for sure.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
No. Well,
I just want
Go
to say there's a waiting list, a booklet on my website, which you can put your name down, so you can kind of pre-order it there.
I will
Great.
absolutely do that. And I assume that's probably the best way for someone to reach out to you if they want to get in contact is through your website. Is that correct?
Yes, you can email me via my website, or you can arrange for a discovery call, or you can follow me on Instagram, Tarp Channeling, at Tarp Channeling.
Well, we're going to lay in direct links to those in our show notes. So all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to Gayle's episode page, and you'll see all the links there. Very easy to access, and we'll connect you with Gayle because it's important. She has incredible wisdom to impart. So Gayle, Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for fighting through and finally
Yes.
getting the information out. And I don't know. I feel like this is not the only time that we are going to talk, because there's a connection. There's something there that I think we need to explore further. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. And I'm starting to feel, as I zoom back from this conversation, that in fact, the technical difficulties we had were so we would definitely remember this as being a talk that we can revisit again and again and again. It makes it a more memorable scenario. So I very much would love to come back and talk on a whole number of topics, including health and well-being, and maybe we should have Tarp come through on another session. Thank you for having me.
That would be wonderful.
Definitely. And I was thinking the exact same thing. I think when you're talking about even difficult things are there for a reason. The fact that we push through will make it. We will never forget this. Trust me.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Thomas, thank you again so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been really lovely. Nice to connect with you both.
Likewise.
And a huge thank you to you. If you know someone who would benefit from hearing the message we're sharing on the show, do them and us a favor and share the show with them. It will help get the word out about us, and it might just change someone's life for the better. Well, that's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.